All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Closers or Losers. Jeremy Miner here, Chairman, Founder, 7th Level. I'm here with my business partner, CEO, Matt Ryder, working from the home office these days. There you go. Only coming into the office in Sydney twice a week. Must be nice working from home.
Must be nice.
Must be nice. So today we're going to talk about, we always try to talk about subjects that you guys message us about, that we see on YouTube or that we see somebody message on our Facebook or something. And today we picked, what was the aha moment that you had that really took you to the next level, that caused you to start, taking the red pill over the blue pill, the aha moment that just took you to the next level and started getting you really good at sales. Matt, I'm going to start with you. And then we're going to talk about another subject that I think is really interesting, is the biggest excuses that salespeople have on why they're not making sales and how to fix that. What was your biggest aha moment?
I think it was realizing, there's probably a couple. First was realizing that scripts are good.
Yeah. Well,
I
think scripts were good before.
I think I just had the telemarketer in my head.
Yeah. Okay. That's valid.
That's what I thought. And it was like robotic and, but I just think it's because I never heard anyone who was good on a script.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Because it sounded scripted, right?
Yeah, that was great. Like as soon as I figured out that I could I just kind of thought sales was just a series of skill sets. I think that you developed over time, I got good at building rapport. I got good at handling objections, but I didn't actually think there would be a process to it because I thought it was so free flowing and conversational that you couldn't have a process. But once I realized that you could have a process and that you could replicate that from call to call to call to call, sales became a lot easier. And I was like, oh, I get this.
Okay, so that was your biggest aha moment, and let's talk about it, because I think a lot of I've read several books where sales trainers are like, you can't have a script, just got to be conversational, and then you'll have others like, you have to have a script, you have to have something to follow. We're in the middle here. You have to have a sales structure to follow, especially for a company to have reps. If they're all just out there kind of winging it and selling on their
problem solving.
There's no duplication in that. You don't know what they're doing right or wrong because they're just all saying different things, right? They're just all personality. So you have to have a sales structure or script, but you don't want your reps reading it. That's the point that we're talking about, because if they just sit there and read it, like Matt said, they sound like a freaking telemarketer. They sounded like a scripted robot. The easiest way I can give you kind of the best analogy, it's kind of like you're a Hollywood actor or actress, right? Yep. So who's your favorite actor over there? Tell me somebody.
Let's go with Chris Pratt.
Okay, that's valid. I haven't heard. Okay, Chris Pratt. I like Chris Pratt. Okay, I can see why you'd like Chris Pratt. That makes complete sense. You don't say. Okay, that's valid. All right, so mine would be like George Clooney or like Leonardo DiCaprio, whatever. So look at Chris Pratt, George Clooney, Leo. Look at your favorite actress, whoever that is. Scarlett Johansson's mine. Everything they say in that film is what? 100% scripted for the most part. But do they sound? So it's like they have lines, but it doesn't sound scripted because they've memorized their line. And it causes you, when you watch the movie, you don't even think of them as Chris Pratt. You don't think of them as George Clooney or Scarlett Johansson. You think of them as the character they're portraying, because it sounds so natural. Their body language, their movements, their hand gestures, the way they talk, it's all scripted. So as a sales professional, you memorize your lines. You memorize the script so you know where to go. You're not sitting there reading it, right?
Yeah, which I think actually brings me to my second aha moment, which was that there are two types of development in sales. And the one that everybody does is role plays and, but what people miss is the academic study. I feel like sales is an academic pursuit. You would not, and I say this on our trainings with our advanced inner circle clients all the time, which I take a couple sessions, and it's like, if you were a doctor and the consequences were life and death, would you have studied this week? Yes. Okay. Well, what happens if you don't make enough money? Well, I can't pay my bills. What happens if you don't pay your bills? Well, I get kicked out. What happens if you get kicked out and don't have any money? Well, I can't do anything. Exactly. So you end up dead or in jail, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, so take it seriously. and do your academic studies. So like, one of the things that we do with our training, in our training is we make them do academic study every week on the NEPQ process, because what we want to develop in our clients is like a fallback position where they default to the process. Mm-hmm. When curveballs are thrown at them and crazy stuff, we train them to go back to their training and reassess and go forward instead of getting flustered and losing the sale. So I think like that for me was like, okay, this is an academic pursuit. It can be learned. I just have to actually treat it like one.
Yeah, it's a studied profession, right?
Exactly.
You're acquiring the skills. Like we always talk about, like no one, let me repeat this. No one is born out of your mother's womb having advanced questioning skills. Anybody? No takers. No one is born out of your mother's womb having advanced tonality skills. Nobody is born out of your mother's womb having advanced objection prevention and handling skills.
Exactly.
Those are skills you learn, you acquire them. It's the same thing like if you're a professional golfer, like you're not born out of your mother's womb with the right technique on your swing. Like you freaking learn that. Like, come on now. So I think a lot of salespeople, they get into sales like they don't have any other choice and like, oh, I want to get out of sales. They only want to get out of sales because they don't know how to sell, right? Because if you're really, really good at something and you're comfortable with it and you don't have all this sales resistance from your prospects, you don't get slapped around and punched in the nose because you don't know what to say or ask, selling is really, really profitable, right? There's not really a lot of stress there. So exactly. I think, go ahead.
What was your big one? What was your first big aha moment? We've heard the Tony Robbins stuff and all that kind of stuff, so we know that. But I want to hear something people have never heard before. Like, what is the moment where you're like, oh, crap?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, all right, I understand now.
My biggest
pennies dropped for you.
My biggest moment is when I started to understand that there were certain things that I could say or ask that would get the prospect to let their guard down. It was just, I don't know how it happened. It just like quite literally, I think I was studying this course from Robert Cialdini or something. He's, you've probably heard of him. He's got the book Persuasion. He's been around for like 30
Robert P. Cialdini or something like that?
Yeah. He's a professor. He's the professor here at Arizona State. But I was taking a course from him, like maybe within like a month and a half after I got into selling, because my degree was behavioral science stuff. So we were taking all these different courses. And there was some type of concept he talked about, like, hey, you have to get your, the people you talk to, like, to let their guard down. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? How do I get them to let their guard down? Because I remember my first job was selling home security systems door to door, and they would have us dress up really nice and nice shoes and nice slacks and nice collared shirt. And I'm like, oh, well, they probably think I'm a salesperson. I don't remember quite exactly how I came, but I came to the conclusion like, oh, if they think I'm a salesperson, they're probably going to have they're going to resist me. So how do I get them to think I'm not a salesperson? And so what I started like just wearing, like, I started dressing like very casual, like just a collared shirt like this, just very basic, khaki shorts. I started wearing those white New Balance shoes, like old
the dad sneakers from Costco.
Sneakers, yeah. Sneakers when you're like 50 or 60 or whatever. I'm never wearing those. And then I I put a tape measure on there because, you got to measure where the panel and the equipment's going to go in the house. I put a tape.
Oh, yeah, obviously. Yeah.
And I bought a construction vest. I don't know what they wear in Australia.
The high vis kind of fluoro.
The orange construction vest. And I brought a lime green one like a year later. And I would knock on the door and I had like this clipboard. So it was like I had like a sheet of paper on here with a pin. I was like looking around like I was there, like reading their meter. So instantly when they came out and I was like, yeah, are you guys the homeowner here? And I acted like confused. They're like, yeah, we're the homeowner. What's going on? Just immediately, like people were they'd come outside. They wouldn't hide behind the door, like with one eye, like they were in the beginning with me. And I'm like, oh, there's something to this.
They probably said, how can I help?
Yeah, I'm like, something to this where I was
not quite sure you could yet.
Let their guard down. And once I started to learn how to get them to let their guard down, then I changed some of my vocabulary with what I was saying. I started learning like how to change words. I would see words that when I would say it, they would get like resistance. I'm like, how can I change the word around? And
can you give me an example?
Well, like I used to say, like, sign the contract. Okay, I just need you to sign your John Hancock on the contract and we'll be good. And I noticed a lot of people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not sure. Like I'd get people like, yeah, I don't know. I need to think about this. This is really good, Jeremy. Really like you, but I'm like, whoa, okay, sign the contract. What's a different term for that? And I came up with authorize the agreement. Okay, so just need you to authorize the agreement that gives us permission to X, Y, and Z. And I repeat back what they said they wanted. And they're like, oh, sure, authorize the agreement. So just little changes in the vocabulary I was using, I started learning. And I would read sales books from the gurus. And I'm like, and I'd use it and it didn't work. And I'm like, well, if you relanguaged it this way and said it this way and you use different tone, it actually works really well, really well.
Okay.
So just through trial and error, I just learned from the start of the sales process, from the very first words out of my mouth to the end of that conversation, whether I was in B2B, because I had 2 B2B sales jobs and 2 B2C, to the end of the sales process, whether it's a one call close or, 3 months later, a bigger deal close, that everything I said and asked, the one thing I had to do was keep disarming them where they kept their guard down the whole time. And I'm telling you, once I learned how to get prospects to disarm and like let their guard down, I mean, I went from like a nobody in that company. Like within a year, I was the number 1 salesperson. Within 2 years, I was the number 1 salesperson in the entire industry. You're talking about tens of thousands of salespeople in that industry. Then I went into a completely different industry, went from B2C, transactional sales, to B2B. After a couple of months, I was like the number 1 person in that company, like 300 reps. And people are like, what the hell's going on? But I knew how to disarm people. Now it took me like a couple of weeks to figure it out because it was a little bit of a different person, right? Now I was talking not to a homeowner knocking on the door. I was talking to some C-level executive that had a phone appointment because they didn't have Zoom back in 2006, 2007. So I was talking to them, or I would go to their office. So it was a little bit of a different angle, but industry, I learned how to disarm better and better and better. And that's obviously what a lot of people learn today in NEPQ. That was a big one for disarming.
I'm curious. I'm just curious. I'm sure the audience is, when they came out of the house and you were kind of going, are you the homeowner? Like, what was your before? Because you hadn't developed NEPQ yet.
Yeah.
What was your process back then?
I think I had I just had a standard door approach. I did change it differently. So I had these like 5 questions on the clipboard. These would have been now what I would call situation questions. I didn't know then, but I would ask the craziest questions you would think of. So back in the day, the whole pitch that we wrote up for selling alarm systems, because they could get the equipment for free, but then they had to pay the monthly monitoring, which was like $40 or $50 a month. And they signed a 36-month or 60-month agreement for that. And then the company would go sell that contract to like ADT and the big monitoring companies. See how that works? And they would pay them like a multiple up front of like 5, let's say it was
the same as insurance.
Yeah, they would pay them a multiple of like 6 years because the average customer would stay on 12 years. That's how they made their money, right? So basically I came up with this we'd start carrying the signs with us, like the alarm signs. And basically we would say, like, if you're willing to put your sign out here to advertise when your neighbors are driving by, we'll give you this alarm system at no cost. And later when we get in the home, we would bring up, oh, you just had to pay the monthly monitoring, has to be connected to the police, but like not a big deal. Right. So I can't remember the exact questions I had, but I'm like, yeah, are you guys, could I have the sign in the clipboard? I'm like, you guys the homeowners? Yeah, we're the homeowner. Yeah. Are you guys the bushes that you guys have over there? Do you typically trim those down in the summer, or do you let them grow really high? And they're like, no, we trim them down for sure. Okay. And then just, and I don't have much time. I've got to go. But when cars drive by here, like in the afternoon, would you say there's like more than like 20 to 30 cars, or is there like not much traffic during the day? Oh, there's a lot of traffic. Oh, okay. And I would start off that, and I'd start asking these questions like that, and they would just roll with me because I disarmed them. And they're like, oh yeah. Well, the reason why I asked you is I'm with XYZ company, and we're having our salespeople come out here later this summer to sell like alarm systems. So what we're doing is we're trying to get advertising out here so that, when the salespeople come by, we already have people that have alarms. So if you're willing to put this sign up here, now we'd have to make sure that it was like right in front of that shrub, because I need to make sure there's at least like 40 people seeing that every day. It's important to the company. The company's willing to give you this alarm system to like protect the home from like intruders breaking in at no cost. And there was something else I would say there. They're like, oh, really? Okay. And then I'd be like, can I see? And I'd kind of like point into the home, like, what do you guys have in here? They're like, oh yeah, come on in. I'm like right in there in the home in like 2 minutes. Like a complete stranger in a construction outfit. I'm in the home in like 2 minutes, like nothing, like I was their best friend. There's more to that. I have to go back and remember but it was all because I got to disarm them. Whereas all the other salespeople, they were like, slam, door in the face, slam, slam. They'd have to like knock on 100 doors to make like 2 sales. And I would have to knock on like literally like 3 doors to make 2 sales. It was like easy. I would basically sell almost every home. Funny. It was whether they passed credit or not. I'm quite literally, there was days where I literally knocked on like, let's say 12 doors and only had 6 sales, but I sold everybody. There's 6 people didn't pass credit and 6 people did pass. So they got installed. It's like I could sell almost everybody. Like, yeah, do you guys see your neighbors over there? We had the Jones family put that sign in the yard, and then I would start using the signs that they had in the yard, and I would literally sell everybody in the cul-de-sac, everybody down the road, because I would point to the neighbors with the signs. Everything.
So you don't want to be the only one without an alarm, right?
Yeah, basically. Well, I wouldn't say that. So it was all about disarming them. And once I started learning how to disarm them, and just those questions that really made no sense, it only makes sense for like advertising for a sign. It just triggered more engagement. And I'm like, oh, that's, then later on when I got into B2B sales, I'm like, okay, well, those are like, I'm asking them like, and that's when I came up with situation questions. NEPQ took about 12 years to develop. I was just like me asking certain questions and I would organize them. And then I'm like, oh, this is more of a connecting question. This is more of me finding out their situation. This is where I find their problem. So I need to label that. Yeah. And I started labeling it because the companies I was selling for were asking me like, hey, can you train all of our reps? And I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to train them? I've got to label the different sections of the questions. And that's where I came up with the names.
Was there a question where you came up with your like, Jeremy, you son of a bitch, you did it? Was it like, is there a particular question that you're like most proud of or a section?
Consequence questions.
Consequence questions.
I probably didn't ask consequence questions until my second job. It was probably like 7-8 years after I started selling. And
not even in home alarms.
No, I didn't even ask.
Consequences are big for that one.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know what I didn't know. Dude, I was a young kid, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So when I got into like debt relief services, selling to like companies, like mainly SMB, I started, I don't know how it happened. I don't remember, but I just started asking like, well, what happens if you don't do anything and you keep paying the high interest on the debt for the next, 12, 24, 36 months, and they keep raising the interest rates? Like, what happens to you guys then? They're like, oh my gosh, like we could go under. And I'm like, oh, I don't even remember how I asked it. I just remember I randomly asked some type of question. The guy was like, oh my gosh, we've got to change now. And I'm like, oh, I don't think it got labeled as a consequence question until later, but I started asking like, hey, well, what are the ramifications if you guys don't do anything about the debt?
It's a great B2B way of putting it, ramifications.
And their interest rates keep going up from the Fed. Oh my gosh, like there's no way we could be, I don't know if we could, well, how many more months are you going to be able to pay the interest when they keep raising it? This was like 2009, 2010, all that kind of stuff. And they're like, oh no, there's no way I could, all that kind of stuff.
Beautiful.
Those questions were good.
I like it. And, okay. And so, I did the same thing, but mainly with like analogies. So in like our 3.0 and above training, we teach all the analogies and hooks and frames and stuff. And I just came up with them. Like the congruence frame, I think is probably the one that I was most proud of.
Tell us how you did that. NEPQ.
So I was selling salespeople. So I was selling for 7th level. I was the first sales guy.
First person of the company.
Yeah. And I just kept getting salespeople because salespeople, I think, have a tendency, and we can talk about that next, to just not act, right? Like most salespeople, it's why it's such a heavily, the 1% make 99% of all the money, is because most salespeople, I don't think, are willing to put themselves in a position to where they do win. Yeah. And so, and especially like if you sell something where you get people to overcome, like I come from fitness background and then a high ticket sales background. So like for me, everyone that I was selling was kind of holding themselves back from success. Right. So I'm a very much a B2C salesperson, like I would think. And so from there, it was like, all right, well, I was selling sales reps, and I was like, I really enjoy having conversations with sales reps, because in order to get people out of their own way, then, sales reps are really good at getting themselves out of their way. There's a kind of congruence between speech and action. Does that make sense? So they're always really productive conversations. And people are like, yeah. And then the whole way throughout the process, I would anchor the word congruence. Let's just say we are able to help you become that more kind of congruent, consistent sales rep. Like, you think you mentioned you want to make more money. Like, what would you actually do with that type of money coming in, though? And then it's like in consequence questions, it was like, what happens if you don't figure out how to make that transition into a more congruent, consistent sales rep? Put yourself in a position where you can make 30 grand a month so that you can provide the kind of support for your family that you want. Like, what happens then? And then when they come at me with an objection, it's sort of like I can then wrap that in. I can go through my logistical and then wrap it all through congruence and go like, well, let me ask you a question. What would the most congruent salesperson do right now? Well, I mean, they'd move forward. All right. Well, how much longer do you want to put off being a congruent salesperson? I go, I don't know. Like, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was probably the one that made me the most money anyway.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good. We only got a couple minutes here. What do you think are the few biggest things that you see salespeople say are the reasons why they can't make more sales?
Blaming the leads, blaming the market conditions.
Okay. Why do they do that?
Don't know. One of our sales reps, his father, Oscar, he's one of our new guys. His father is a restaurant owner who made a ton of money during COVID.
Okay.
And it's like one of the things that I actually use that as an example all the time because people are like, oh, the market or Christmas, or it's like, hey, I know a restaurant owner who made double the money that he usually makes during COVID. Do you know how he did that? It's like, no. It's like, well, he figured out that it wasn't his fault, but it was his problem. And instead of complaining about market problems, he used it as an opportunity to innovate.
Yeah.
And if you make a problem bigger than yourself, the chances of you even trying to fix it is negligible. It's why one of the worst things you can do to children is tell them they're fat genetically.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. They'll spend their whole life going, well, nothing I can do about it.
I'm just going to keep eating the donuts and the pizza.
Exactly. Because there's nothing they can do. Right. So if you assume a problem is outside of your control, you will not try to fix it.
Yeah.
And so I think about taking that power back and going, no, I can figure this out. This is my problem to solve. Not my fault. There is a problem. Like when COVID hit, I was sitting there as a sales guy and everything went crazy. I was like, well, I got to figure out a way to figure this out. So I came to you and I spent 80% of every dollar I had learning how to sell from you because I was like, well, if anyone's going to figure out how to sell through this, it's probably you. Yeah. So I'll just do that.
It's not my fault that COVID happened, but it is it damn sure is my problem.
Exactly. So I think like for me, those are that and the same as blaming the leads, right? Yeah. So like one of the things that I would do when I was selling for 7th level, I go, well, to disarm that, I would preempt it. I was like, I would go through their close rates and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, let's just say Jeremy was on your account. Of the leads that you're getting now, how many do you think Jeremy could sell? Oh, well, I mean, he would sell probably 70%. All right. So 70% is possible then. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. If you have the skills. Okay. So I would disarm that.
Skills?
What's that?
You want those same skills?
Exactly. So now that we established that it's possible, then it's like, all right, all we have to do is put the plan in place to get the skill sets required to do it.
Yeah. I love that. That's really good.
It's not like you're a unicorn. You're just someone who did the work.
It's just somebody who acquired skills. I always look at myself like if I'm a superhero. People ask, I had somebody ask me at a keynote, like, if you were a superhero, which one would you describe yourself as? I'm like, well, I'm Batman. I wasn't born like Superman with like freaking all these powers. I'm Batman. I've just learned all these little skills, right? I've got these little weapons here. I've got these little techniques I've acquired. There's nothing special about Batman. He's just
you have a terrifying fear of bats.
Exactly. I got a terrifying fear of bats too, right? I'm not like Superman or, I'm not like Flash. They can just run fast or whatever. Not Wonder Woman or anything. Like I wasn't born with those skills. I acquired those skills. So if you're a salesperson, you can become like Batman. You just acquire skills and you're really good. There you go.
What about you? What's the main reason you like that you hear? Is it pretty similar?
It's always the leads. It's always the leads. The leads have a bad mindset. The leads have fear. The leads don't have the money. And here's what I always say. Look, of course, your leads have fear that they're going to make a buying mistake or a decision, but it's your job as the sales professional to help them overcome that fear. That's why you get paid a lot of money. So if you don't know how to help them overcome their fear, is that their fault or your fault? That's your responsibility. You just acquire skills to learn how to overcome the fear. Now, on the flip side, with the second thing that I was talking about, as far as the, they're broke, they don't have the money. Well, no, unless you're selling like $1 million package to like somebody that makes 30 grand a year, the money is there. Like it can be found. The money exists. It's just not a priority in their mind of taking that money they're already spending on something else and moving that over to you. It's not like the money, if you sell life insurance, it's not like the money doesn't exist. They're already spending that money on something else that is more of a priority.
They can afford $800 a year.
So your job is to help them shift where that money is currently being spent over to your solution. And now it's a much bigger priority. So when salespeople start thinking like, oh, I have the power to do that. Well, yeah, if you learn the right questions asked that trigger them to view what you're offering is more of a priority than what they're already spending that on, selling is really easy. So you fix those two things, selling is easy, you make a lot of money for sure. Easy peasy.
Perfect. All right. And if they want to learn some of these skills, where should they go?
Yeah, hey, we'll give them some free resources, some little hors d'oeuvres, little nibbles before they get anything advanced. Let's have them go to our free Facebook group. Got about 40,000 members in it. That thing's growing like a mofo. Salesrevolution.pro. So just go to salesrevolution.pro. And what me and Matt will do right when you join, check your DMs. We'll have somebody on the team message you over a free training called the NEPQ 101 mini course. I believe that's Matt breaking down NEPQ a little bit more detailed. And we go live in the Facebook group, 3 times a week or so, different subject matter trainings, different interviews, Q&As. We'll give them a little nibble there. They want more nibble. A little more nibble. They want advanced training. Besides that, like our clients are in that are probably in the same industry as they are, they can just message us in the Facebook group and we can give them training details, training options for their industry if they want to sell more. Matt, thanks for being on. I got to get out of here. Thanks, everybody.
Guys, see you later. Bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed these, here's another you can watch right over here. Join our free Sales Revolution group. Click the link below, join us, and we're going to help you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon.